So today is the 21st of November. I was supposed to record on the 18th, but I couldn't do it. The 18th, I hurt my back. And then this weekend was my nephew's birthday, and then we were trying to get gifts together and stuff like that for the holidays, and it's just been a lot. So, through all of that, I still had the hurt back. So, anyway, I am here. I am recording now on the 21st. Um, so the 18th marked a year and 11 months on an actual dose of tea. Technically, they gave me a weaker dose at first because of my health history and hormones and stuff, but it was foolish reasoning why when they did that, and thankfully they fixed that. But so technically I started in October, but of that year, but yeah, next month on the 18th, December 18th, it will be officially 2 years full on testosterone. And yeah, it feels like I've been on testosterone a lot longer than that. Like it feels like it wasn't actually that fast. That it hasn't been that recent. Because being on testosterone feels very natural to me, or has been such a helpful thing for me. Because not living every single day in depression is great, but also all of the like physical health stuff, not having that anymore is great. And yeah, it's weird to be like, yeah, it's about to be 2 years, and it's like, has it only been 2 years? Like, really? But at the same time, I wish I would have started so much younger. And yeah, it's very strange. But also, I've been having a lot of problems with. It's like part of my life didn't even happen, and I feel very like detached from some of my like early to mid 20s. I feel very removed from it. Like I spent a lot of that time sort of out of it, not fully present. And I know that a lot of it was dissociation and everything, um, but there's still that like separation. And so it's strange to be as old as I am because I feel like I missed out on a big chunk of my life. Like, I also feel like, turns out I spent the last 10 years throwing myself completely into something in vain. And that's been a struggle to deal with as well. But it feels strange that I haven't even been on testosterone that long, but it feels so like correct to be on testosterone. It feels like I should have been on it a long time. And I got my labs done when I saw my doctor before, and all my labs came back with perfect health. Really good blood sugar, amazing cholesterol, good blood pressure, good testosterone levels. It's basically still at like 800, which is fine. Good, wonderful number. um, and all my other stuff is all good and happy and healthy and stuff. Estradiol levels and stuff like that. And then the only thing wrong with me is still the anemia. That'll be wrong with me forever, probably, unless they somehow come up with a cure in the future, which medicine makes advances, so it's possible. But yeah, um, I've contacted them again And again, I still don't have any kind of anything, and it's a struggle not to be depressed about it or upset about it. That I have no idea when my surgery is, and I feel like I've put like a whole bunch of stuff on hold, and this isn't helping. Like, not having an idea of when that hold is going to be lifted or when something's going to change is very difficult for me. And man, it is not fun to feel like they really could just care less. And I'm hoping that's not what it is. I'm hoping that maybe they're just really slow to recover from the person leaving. But at this point, I was originally supposed to have my surgery somewhere around the beginning to the middle of November. So at this point, I would have already had my surgery, and to be past the point where I would have already had it and still not even have a date scheduled for when the surgery will happen feels really, really terrible. Like, that it has to have a delay is understandable to me, but that there's no end in sight for that delay is awful. And everything's just stuck. There is no way to move past this at the moment, and they're not giving me any information. Um, so I feel very sad, and I can't wait till I am past this and I can go back to my actual surgical team. Because my actual surgeon is good, and his co-surgeon seems really good, and my surgeon's assistant is so great, and he doesn't do this particular surgery, and this particular surgery is just being very problematic. And the thing is, I had my top surgery and it went really quickly. It went well. I've been recovering from it just beautifully. Like, top surgery was just like a miracle kind of a thing. And then I was scared because, because of the way that they did their vacation time and everything, that I might essentially not be able to get a surgery that had been thought that I would get it in the fall, even before next year. And they worked around it. They jumped through hoops. My surgeon and my surgeon's assistant, uh, you know, coordinator, like, they really went out of their way to help me and try to make it still happen this year. And it would have still happened this year. It would have happened like last week or something. And but the person left, and everything's been thrown up in the air, and now I'm with this surgeon woman who just really doesn't seem to give a crap at all about her patients. And it's frustrating because I have to have this surgery to get the other surgeries, and I really, really, really want to. It's just, the whole thing is just unfortunate. Like, if they're not putting me on the surgery list for on the schedule, I don't understand why. First of all, I've done every single thing they asked, and I did it all as soon as they asked it. Like, they have all my letters. I signed the consent forms for the surgery. I signed the consent forms for being examined during the surgery. I coordinated with my surgeon, and he was like thrilled to have the consult be while I was under and everything. Like, I did all the footwork, and they just won't put me on the schedule. And I can't make any plans. I can't do anything. Um, I'm supposed to start working after the holidays because I was supposed to be recovered by then from the surgery that was supposed to be now, and now I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should just start working something anyway, and then as soon as I do that, they say, yeah, you got surgery, and just drop it. And just not put on my resume that I even worked there or something. I don't know. Or I've thought about getting like some sort of job where you can just sort of show up. I looked at dog walking, but the problem with dog walking, I touched a dog. I touched a dog at the farmer's market. It was super cute. It reminded me of my childhood dog, and I touched it for all of like 4 seconds. I just patted it on top of its head, and it brushed its nose against me, and that was it. And I was so sick the rest of the day. Like, I'm very allergic, and I didn't realize that I was that allergic. I thought, because I had dogs when I was growing up, and so I thought, oh, it'll be fine. I'll be outdoors. You know, it wasn't fine. And apparently, when I was a kid, I was fine. And then at some point, I developed a really bad allergy. So now I've been trying to look for some other job and it be something like that where you can just show up, do it, and then not show up. And there's like all these like Uber Eats or delivery things like Amazon Flex and stuff like that. And I'm like, do I want to drive our car around all over the place and do stuff? But at the same time, I need some sort of something that is gonna work out. And I hate driving, but I need something that'll work out where my life isn't consistent and I have no idea when my surgery will be. I have no idea how long the recovery will be. I have no idea if there'll be complications from it. And I am trying to work around that and come up with something. And I'm trying to move past my relationship from the last decade ending, and I'm trying to pull myself together and find the things that I'm glad of that are in my life and find the things that I'm not glad of and I want to change and think about what steps would have to happen for those things to change. Like what would actually have to happen to accomplish something. And I'm trying to get more it feels selfish. More self-seeking, I guess, but it feels bad, but at the same time I'm trying really hard to embrace some of that and not be such a bystander in my own life and be more accepting of when I want something and that it's okay to communicate it and if someone wants to give me something it's okay. I don't have to be like am feeling like I'm a burden and if I really struggle with feeling like I'm a burden and feeling like I constantly have to make up for being here, for being present. And I'm trying to work on stuff like that. And I'm trying to make some sort of a plan, but everything fills up in the air. And I hate that feeling. I hate that feeling that you can't do anything toward something. You can't do anything to make anything even slightly better. And that like limbo feeling. I find it oppressive. Limbo. But I have been getting like presents and wrapping them and stuff like that for family and thinking about like the holidays is cheering me up a little bit. I really really love gift giving and trying to think of like ways to make people smile and stuff like that. Stuff like that makes me really happy And a present worked out really well for my girlfriend that I wasn't expecting at all. And that was amazing. There was a Black Friday sale that really, really was a big sale. Like, I would never have thought I could get the thing that I got. Uh, and I did. I managed it because of the sale. So, really happy about that. And just trying to focus on the happier things. I was trying to think of things that I can do right now while I'm in limbo, and because I've been so feeling down, it's been hard for me to exercise like beyond doing like my arm stretches and stuff. And so I was like, well, that's something I can be doing. Taking a little time in a day and exercising is good for your health. It's good for your mental health. It's good for you long term or whatever. And it's something that I can be doing. And so I'm like, I've been trying to the last couple of days, few days, despite my hurt back, uh, to at least like walk or something because it's like, of course, you make a decision to do something good for yourself, like exercise, and then immediately hurt your back. And I didn't hurt my back from exercising. I actually hurt my back from sitting on the floor for hours and hours. And I have stage 1 arthritis in my lower back. And yeah, I could hardly walk for a little bit, but it was like I think I started at like 8:30 in the morning and I didn't stop until like 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Like I'm talking hours. I just sat on the floor rapping and rapping and rapping and rapping because we have a lot of presents. And yeah, it did a number on my back. So, but I'm starting to do a little better. It gets a little sore if I get in certain positions, but otherwise it's okay. So it's functional. But yeah, I was like, what is something I can be doing that can make anything better? And the thing I came up with was go back to exercising regularly and stop being feeling down or whatever's to where you don't do it and just do it anyway whether you feel like it or not. So that is something I've been working at. I did yesterday, I did calisthenics for the first time in like a while. And I only did it for like 15 minutes. I didn't want to kill myself or anything. I didn't want to like put a ton of pressure on myself, especially because I don't want to make my back upset again. But also, I am still, I'm almost to where I can put my hands up all the way. Almost. My stretches are almost there. My one of my trans friends was like, "Oh yeah, it took me at least like 6, 8 months, something like that," and I'm like, "It's a little over 4 months for me." But I've really been trying to follow through. I want to have good results. My scars are way ahead in healing from what their expectation was to be. My doctor and my surgeon both said that. And I've been trying to do all the right things because I want to have a good result. And I don't know, I feel like also a little bit if I'm doing all the right things and proving to my surgeon how committed I am and how serious I am, that he takes note of that. But that doesn't help with this other surgeon that I need for this one surgery, and then I can go back to my real surgeon. Blah 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 blah. I'm so grateful for my surgeon that I managed to just luck into. And I'm so grateful for my doctor who has always been so incredibly kind and patient with me. And they've helped me have a better view of medicine in general, and that's good. I went to the dentist recently, and that was a fine and good experience. Um, Turned out my teeth are doing a lot better than they were expecting, and the thing that's the worst in my teeth isn't my fault. I don't know if I made a recording about my dentist visit or not. Anyway, whether I did or not, this can just be a recap if I did. But basically, my wisdom teeth grow like this, or no, the yeah, like this. So this one over here has to be extracted because it is smashing into my back molar and creating a hole in it by tearing in, like cracking into it. It doesn't hurt. I cannot feel it, but they said it's pretty bad, and so they need to extract that wisdom tooth. And so I only actually have one cavity, and it's like right here or whatever. But so they're gonna fill that cavity, and they're gonna fill where my wisdom tooth tore into my other tooth back there, my molar, at the same time. So basically, I have like one cavity after like so many years of not taking care of myself and going and doing dentist stuff. So I feel like at least I'm doing that while I'm waiting around for a surgery anyway, and I'm trying to get my mental health and physical health and everything doing well, or however you want to say that. I'm trying to get myself to a point of managing myself better, or rebuilding myself, or whatever. Be less sad, less affected every time I think about my soon to be ex-wife, and less obliterated. And I'm trying really hard to, I guess, just step up, or whatever. And I feel like the dentist is something that I can do toward that. I can get myself right or whatever. But yeah, I'm trying. I am trying very hard. It's weird. My therapist asked me to know what I want in a relationship, so that hopefully going forward into relationships, I know exactly what I want. And the thing is I've done that before, and I thought I did know what I wanted. And it's so funny because the things that I said that I wanted, like, were what I ended up with. But some of the things that I want were kind of put to the side a little more, and there was excuses made for why they couldn't happen. And I guess the biggest thing that would be different is not being so dismissive of the things that weren't there. Just because I was so grateful that some of the things I wanted were there. And not being willing to compromise myself so much. A lot of the things that I want in a relationship are still the same. And it's funny. I was watching. I found it very interesting too. There's this guy I was watching explain stuff that he learned. He did psychology analytics, and he did study groups and studies, and helped with peer reviews and stuff like that, all the way from since the 70s. And he was like, the way psychology works is so different, and the way trends have changed and stuff when it comes to people looking for what in mates, or who was gonna be more likely to have this kind of mental instability, or this kind, or even just a general population description of their like health. The ways that it's described is changed. And like he said, in his opinion, after years and years of doing this and studying human beings basically for a living, um that people think there's a lot of important decisions that determine your life, and they can disagree with him if they want. But statistically, in actuality, based on all of the information that has been gathered, all the facts, um, he said, in his opinion, the most important decision a person can make in their entire lifetime to determine the quality of their life is who they pick for their partner. Like the majority of all of your being able to balance and feel supported, or ability to be thrown completely into a derailed tailspin and feel constant walking on eggshells, is totally about how you're who you're choosing to live with, who you're choosing to raise children with, who you're choosing to bond with and be influenced by and to influence. Like the relationship, the partnership, the person who is with you all that time, like that is the biggest relationship and the biggest decision. And he was like, a lot of people say, oh, it's money or your career, or, it's choosing a religion and stuff like that. And he said, from all the information from all the way since the 70s, no matter how the trends have changed, that's the one thing that's remained consistent, is basically a tremendous amount is determined by the partner that you choose for your life. And I can say that's definitely been true of my life. um, like tremendously. Um, he was talking about how a lot of things have changed, and it was very interesting. Um, like it used to be that you had not so great years at different times than it is currently. So, like right now, he says that the majority, because he just recently sold the entire business, so he was in it, and he was one of the top ones for like the entire time. But he was like, the majority right now of your lower years are around 20, 25-ish to 40, 45-ish. And he's like, up until then, your years majority general population can be pretty decent, and then you hit hardship really fast. All of a sudden you're hit with a bunch of debt, you're hit with a bunch of work, you're hit with a bunch of family and life decisions. Your parents start getting older, and you realize mortality, and their fragility. You realize how much maturity you yourself have to commit to, and there's a lot of pressure. And then you get to a certain point where you sort of more accept yourself, and you start being more comfortable and content with little things, and you become more in awe of life in general. And then after that, life's a lot less bad, because a lot of that stress goes away. And he said it's strange because the older you get, the more health problems you have, and that can definitely be a stressful thing. But the rest of your life becomes less and less stressful for the majority of the generalized population of the United States. And he said it didn't used to be quite that way, though. It used to be that your stress levels were actually really, really bad in your teens, and then they started to get a little better for a little bit in your 20s, and then they through 30s and stuff like that, and then they would get bad more around quote unquote the midlife crisis age in your 40s and 50s, and then you'd start to do a little better, and then it'd be really bad at your old age and stuff. Like basically there's been a large shift in your there used to be more gaps. There used to be more ups and downs of these feel like good years for the general population. These feel like bad years for the general population. And now it's like a big block, and the block is long, and you have to somehow like sludge through. And he was like, to anyone who's young and who's feeling it and you're swamped by debt, you just lost your first job and you're like terrified of life and you're supposed to be engaged and you just put down on your first place. Like, I know it feels like life couldn't possibly, ever recover from this, and how are you supposed to get through this? But there are good years ahead. They do exist if you can just get through it. um, he said the things that are being looked for in like relationships have changed dramatically. Even how people go about finding relationships has changed dramatically, and how healthy mentally like the majority of the population has changed dramatically, um, toward the worse, because there's less social communication like face to face. There's less community. There's less going and hanging out with a group of people, and there's more time spent inside. And even when you are socializing, you're socializing in a not face to face kind of way. And we're very social creatures, and even introverts need some contact. Um, and I can agree with that some, because I'm very introverted. Like, I feel like I could very easily be a hermit and maybe have like a lover, and that's it. Like, I don't need a lot. But I do get a lot out of seeing my family a couple times a month, or just talking sometimes, even if I can't face to face talk, just talking on like Discord or something. It can affect me a lot in a positive way. So, um, even someone who's very introverted like me, it's true. Contact, even if it's not like deep, meaningful talks about, you know, the depths of our souls, can sometimes be very impactful. And he was talking about how, you know, choosing of mates used to be a lot more about an exchange system of a lot of times, again, in general population back in like the 70s, the 80s, even up to like the mid late 90s, um, a lot of what women looked for was resources in men, and a lot of what men looked for in women was to be like women who built them up, and attractiveness. And now there's been, and he said it's partially because there's also a change in education. He said it was very interesting, the level of educated people. The majority of educated males are Democrats, and the majority of uneducated males are Republican. And the majority of educated women are Democrats, and the majority of uneducated women are Republican. And he said that's just factual. Statistically, when they do analysis. But it was interesting because he was like, in actuality, though, democracy belongs in majority to educated women. And he said, but there's a reason for that. Women are graduating with degrees twice as much as men are. Like, they're doubling men for coming out into the work field educated. So you have a bunch of older men who had already graduated, and then younger men are becoming more and more uneducated, and younger women are becoming more and more educated, and older women are more uneducated, statistically. again, in a generalization of the United States. And he said these educated women are coming out and they are not just looking for resources from men. He said that what they actually care a lot about is intelligence and maturity, um, because they don't want basically a man who's a man baby, or slower to be mature. A lot of the guys their own age are less mature than them, so they want someone who's more mature, but they also want someone who's kind and supportive and emotionally supportive and stuff. And so a lot less is being searched for from these educated women in the way of, oh yeah, make more money than me, you need to provide. And a lot more it's, yeah, I can provide for myself, but you need to be supportive and you need to be kind and treat me well, and you need to be mature and not be someone I have to constantly take care of and baby. Um, and a lot of men, instead of only looking at like attractiveness and that they build him up, a lot of men are looking for women who are intelligent and they can have a more mutual relationship with. And that's a lot of men. But then there's a whole other massive chunk of men who essentially are looking for the old things in women, the attractiveness and the making them feel like men or whatever, externalizing their manhood and expecting a woman to create that for them. And there's a massive chunk of younger uneducated men who still are looking for that and are becoming more and more like depressed and disgruntled because they're not finding it. And well, very often, again, this is all generalizations. This is all combining massive groups of people together for analysis sake and creating statistical, review, giant studies, basically, like $67 million studies, like massive. And it was very interesting hearing him talk about it because, he was like, when you think about it, when there's like a mass shooting or whatever, you don't have to wonder who it is. You already know before they tell you. It's gonna be a younger, angry man, and he probably doesn't have a lot of love in his life, and he probably is upset with the way the world is turning, and his education might not be that high. And he said it's just a statistic. It's just an expectation at this point, um, because these guys are not having anywhere to put their aggression until it finally just unleashes, and their dissatisfaction with their life, and they're not learning healthy outlets, they're not learning healthy ways to address it, and they're not going out in person and meeting women in person and having a more realistic view of women in person. And so they have this more isolated view of women, and they don't have a reality, and so based on the fantasy they have a hard time accepting reality. And I was listening to all of that and I was like, well, on the plus side, I've had this weird thing where women have multiple times in my life just really, really been attracted to me. And I didn't know why, because I'm not super muscular. I'm short. Like, I'm not the hottest person, as far as like Hollywood standards or anything. But I'm very, very like caring. I'm very giving. I have white knight syndrome. So like women have been able to sense that on me and been very attracted to it. And I've never been rich, lived under the poverty threshold my entire life. Like, I've never had what I think a lot of these just satisfied men think women want. And yet I've had women very strongly express that they want me. And um, have had to tell some women no. And then some of the women I told yes and I shouldn't have, because it turned out to not be very healthy of a relationship. And, I've had to learn that the hard way and stuff, but I am the man that the more modern woman or whatever is looking for. And I can even see that in my relationship with my girlfriend. My girlfriend does not need help earning money. She can earn whatever she needs herself. She's very intelligent, has a good job, or whatever, went to a good college, all that kind of stuff. Um, but she needs like someone who's emotionally supportive of her, and someone who is consistently there for her and loves her unconditionally. And she would not want to be with, like, she gets very intensely impatient and irritated with guys who don't do chores, for instance, or talk down to women and stuff like that. Like, she has no patience for it. And like, if I was the kind of guy who didn't ever do a house chore or something like that, like, it wouldn't matter how kind I was, she still wouldn't be able to live with me, you know? Um, Instead, I do like almost all the chores, and it works for us. And I'm not a traditional powerhouse of a career guy who's killing it or whatever. But I feel like there's a lot of guys who think that they have to hustle and they have to get rich, because if they have the money, then the women will come swarming to them. And there are some women who will be attracted to that, but they're not gonna be the high quality, alluring, you know, intelligent, satisfying woman. They're gonna be more ditzy and uneducated, statistically. um they're looking for something that they're doing stuff that will automatically block them from being as likely to get that. They're lowering their odds of getting the woman that they wish they could get. And then they're frustrated because they think that they're trying so hard, they're doing the things, why isn't the woman coming into their life? And then they think that, it works for some of these guys, so why isn't it working for them? But in reality, statistically, there's only like 10% of guys who are getting chosen by women because they are super hot and have high resources. But because those guys are very show off about it, and they're very quick to say, oh yeah, look at me, um, men think that they are supposed to get that same result by acting that same way, which statistically is not true. It was very interesting also, the statistics on essentially, it was basically the top 50% ish of men in the country, again, the United States, this is not the entire world, um, are okay. They're okay about dating and relationships. They're going to end up in an okay place. And then 50% of people who are dating, not just men, women too, are going to end up in a bad place statistically, currently, right now. And it did not used to be that way, or be reported that way. Instead, it used to be reported at much higher numbers of people who were decently content, or, doing okay. He said what was also interesting is there's a lot of people who think of people who are Gen Z as lazy and super unwilling to work. And he said that's not, according to all of his studies, that's not true at all. That they're actually very hardworking, but they are not willing to tolerate being treated badly as easily as generations before them. And so they get this misconception of being like stuck up or snobbish, or being lazy because they won't work if you just demand it. They have to be getting something out of it as well. And then they'll work their butts off. He said that a lot of younger folk, like, Gen Z, feel like they don't want to end up like millennials. And so they feel like a desperation to have it all together, despite the fact that they're young and they should be acting their age. They feel like they have to get it all together. And he said, on the one hand, he highly recommends economic stability. Like, you can have a much more stable life, period, if you have economic stability. And he said, that doesn't mean get rich. He said that means where you live and how you live, that you are able to stably continue that. And he said, having that stability is a super important thing for mental health and for pressure and all that kind of stuff. But he said it's so disheartening because when we, look into folks who are Gen Z, almost all of them feel like this push, this pressure, and this expectation to become like the top 10%. And they think, oh, I have to become a multimillionaire. I have to become a billionaire. I have to become, like these influencers, or I have to get to this. And he said, when in reality, that's only like 10% of the entire population. And almost no one is going to get to that. So they are being set up in this massive disappointment, like massive sense of failure. And it's not actually that they failed at all. They just had way too strong of expectation. And he said it's a mass of depression. He said the millennial generation has a massive depression because they're not economically stable. And then the Gen Z have a massive depression because this expectation is way too high. And he said it's a very sad thing to like watch happening and unfolding in front of you when you read all these analysis. And he said, his biggest advice to people who are in like Gen Z and stuff is, sure, work, try to get economically stable, but also that's the goal, economic stability. Chill out with the perfectionism, because that's too much. I mean, the whole thing was just very fascinating. And again, it was all generalizations. It's not like 100% of any of these groups of people are this way. It's just where the numbers tended to lean. What story was being told by all of the giant analysis and studies and stuff. And the ways that things had changed from like 70s to 80s to 90s to early 2000s to like now was very interesting to me. Like different trends and different ways of viewing things, or different types of mental illness that were the top mental illnesses diagnosed during those times. Different statistics on different groups of people that were marginalized at different times during those periods, and different groups that were coming into like power during those times. And yeah, there was just a lot of information. And he said it's very interesting because if you went in the 70s, like men acting in a masculine way was like the epitome of good. Like it was yes, this is a healthy young man. And now men have swung too far in the other direction, and any hint of masculinity can get jumped on and treated as if it's toxic. And there needs to be an acceptance of the masculinity. He's like, there's a lot of men who feel a lot of shame and guilt for doing very simple, basic things like asking a girl out on a date because he noticed she was pretty at a coffee shop, and they won't ask the girl because they feel afraid that it'll come across creepy, or it'll come across like they're somehow being toxic. And he's like, that really needs to change, because being a man doesn't automatically make you like bad, which is something I had to come to terms with myself. But I also grew up in a way where the men around me when I was growing up were not good people. Well, we're not doing things that good people would do. They were not doing good things. They were doing bad things. So I had like this skew of an understanding of masculinity because of that, because of negative things that I grew up experiencing and witnessing. But in reality, being male and being even masculine, and he even said so, there's lots of women with masculine traits, and masculinity in and of itself is an okay good thing. But there's a lot of situations where it's treated as if it's like automatically toxic. And there's a difference between toxic masculinity and just masculinity, but that line is being completely blurred instead of being like understood. And he said that the current trends are basically that men with more expressions of like more feminine sides, which men absolutely can do. Just as a woman can express masculinity, a man can express femininity. But it's more openly embraced for him to express femininity in a social situation in a lot of ways, but then it makes him more fragile. It makes him more insecure and depressed and not doing well. And so there's a lot of super unhealthy men between the men who are expecting really toxic relationship stuff and the men who are uneducated and the men who are essentially ashamed, like walking around constantly ashamed. There's a lot of really unhealthy men who are younger in the population currently in the United States. And this is all stuff that was there right when he sold it all of the whole thing. This is what was the results of all of that information. And so maybe it's changed in the last couple of months because it was a couple of months ago that he sold it, but I think it would take longer than a couple of months for stuff like that is that largely affecting that large of groups of the population to change. And I have seen some of that, like just in people that I've seen, but I wouldn't have been able to like articulate it or say, "Oh yeah, this is common," because just because something's my experience doesn't mean it's other people's experience. Like, how do I quantify, "Oh yeah, someone I know is going through this, so obviously a lot of guys are going through this." That's not, there's no facts to substantiate that. Versus this guy saying it, well, now it feels like, stuff that I've seen a couple of guys go through, there's a lot of guys going through that. And I know I certainly have had my own issues with coming to terms with being a man, and that doesn't have to mean that I'm toxic or bad. That was a very big thing I had to go through and think about a lot and accept about myself, because like even when I was younger, I would have dreams where I was a guy and I would be doing something very human, but I would immediately feel when I woke up like I was terrible and that I needed to like pray for my soul and everything else. And part of that was indoctrination. Part of that was growing up in a hyper religious environment, but part of that was also just shame because I had a negative association with like being male, being a masculine person. It's funny. my my therapist was like, you were groomed when you were younger to be like this subservient woman who like always makes everyone happy, and that's part of why you're so codependent and everything, and you have white knight syndrome and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, honestly, I learned a lot of it from my father, and watching him kill himself, basically break himself, work himself to the bare bone, like live in squalor for parts of the year so he could take us on big grand vacations when he got to see us for 2 months. Like, my father broke himself, and you know, he's only in his 60s, and he is like he's in his 80s. Like, his body is just falling apart. He's exhausted all the time. Like, he took years off of his life trying to work himself hard enough to take care of all of us. And as much as, yes, they tried to groom me to be, this young wife ready to pop out children and be a mother, I also very much saw my father take it as, to be an honorable man, you'll do anything for your family. You'll break yourself for your family. You'll you'll work however hard and however long of hours you have to for your family. You'll do anything. And I feel that pressure sometimes, and I have to remind myself of my father now, and that I don't want to end up like he is now, because I will feel that pressure of, well, if I really love this person, I would do anything, even if it's horrible for me, even if it would break me or hurt me or cause irreparable damage to me or knock years off my life. If you really love someone unconditionally, you'll destroy yourself for them. And that's just not healthy. That's not true. You can love someone without destroying yourself for them. And it was interesting. I've been listening to a professor a lot who is extremely educated about borderline personality disorder, because I've been trying to understand relationshipness that I have gone through, and the worst people to end up in a relationship with someone with borderline personality disorder, but also the most like intense love that can be like there is the same relationships. It's a narcissist with someone with borderline personality disorder, or else a codependent. And he was like, a, a narcissist has two people in the fantasy and creates a fantasy of, I'm going to parentify myself and take care of you, and you're going to love me unconditionally. And because I adore you so much, I need you to prove that you love me, and I'm going to treat you like crap. And if you still love me after I treat you like crap, then it'll prove that you really love me. Um, and a codependent does a similar thing. There's a fantasy with two people, and it's the opposite. It's, I'm going to love you so completely, and I only ask in return that you love me just as completely. And I'm going to prove to you just how intensely I love you by letting you treat me like crap. And I will still love you. No matter how crappy it gets, you will still be the center of my entire universe. And I will parentify myself and take care of you to prove that I love you, and you only have to love me back. And both of those things, saying that to someone with borderline personality disorder, like feeds them at first, and then eventually they resent you, and they just suddenly blow the entire relationship up. but it's also like some of the most intense love you'll ever experience because like of the way that borderline personality disorder works and the sheer volume of obsession and like it's an addictive kind of love. And when I was growing up, I didn't have the best examples and role models, especially about relationships. And I learned a lot from like books and movies and stuff. And I've realized how toxic that is because almost all of those relationships are like love at first sight and this intense obsessive love and like basically setting you up to find a healthy love boring and a healthy love unsatisfying and to doubt whether it's really love because if it was really love it would be this intense all-consuming thing and that's not actually love. That's like super unhealthy and not good for you. And those relationships don't tend to work out or last unless the people involved do unhealthy things together to make it last. And it can be very, very interesting to look at, like, you know, how quickly all of that devolves into this desperate kind of love that fizzles away just as quickly as it built up into a crescendo. And you look at like movies and books and stuff, well, they almost never come back years later and say, oh, yeah, these people are still together. Like all these love stories are, hey, we met. Oh, we really like are drawn to each other and attracted to each other. Oh, this is getting like super intense. Let's just go at it. Oh, yay, we're together. It's gonna work out. And then you don't actually see it work out. You don't actually see them living together and the day-to-day monotony and the actually being life partners, actually being compatible. Um, my best friend who lives in Singapore, um, she's technically Chinese, and she said there's a saying in China, and I don't know the exact phrasing of it. I don't remember exactly how she said it, but it basically is love isn't when your heart is being fast, love is when you feel calm. When you meet a person and you feel your, you know, adrenaline rise and your palms get sweaty and your heart is beating fast and you're very, very intensely feeling feelings, that's not love. When you're with someone and you feel calm and you feel collected and you feel comfortable, that's love. That's the person you want to marry. And I was not taught that when I was growing up at all. Uh, like, love had to be all or nothing. Love had to be this insistent thing, this powerful thing. And I looked for it and looked for it and looked for it my whole life. And it just got me into abusive relationship after abusive relationship. Like just really bad relationships. And I would be like at first sight or whatever it is. And even with like my girlfriend, we've been trying to have a more healthy relationship and stuff and talk about things and everything, which communication is key to any good, healthy relationship. But like, you know, the more we talk and understand each other and stuff is good. But when we first were together, it was like very intense and it was very, oh yeah, it's so romantic. I fell in love before I ever even saw a picture of you. Like, you know, all this stuff. And it's like we were like crushing on each other really hard. And a lot of people if their relationship does work out and they like fell in love at first sight or whatever, they like to be like, oh, isn't that so sweet or romantic or whatever. But in reality, when that happens, it's like the trauma in me sees the trauma in you, and we like latch onto each other. And at least my girlfriend and I can like recognize that and work through and come to a much more healthy place. But like I don't I don't make some sort of, I guess, I idealized, you know, oh, isn't that like the most beautiful thing or whatever. I actually feel really like, wow, look at how like desperate we both were. We were both so incredibly miserable and desperate that we latched onto each other and we clung to each other, even though neither of us was in a healthy place. Neither of us was in a position to be a good partner, let alone look for a good partnership. And we managed to work through it, but it was not easy or good at all for a long time. Like, there was a lot of really negative things that happened that, quite frankly, we probably should have stayed broken up when we broke up if we would have stayed those people. But we both have been trying to better ourselves and not be those same people and be better than what we were when it comes to our mental health and our instability about like life. Like, there were a lot of things that were really not okay, and I look at it and I'm just like, thank goodness we're not where we were. But she feels like sometimes that I wish we could go back to that because she was more obsessed with me. And I did used to think that's what love had to be. And like my ex-wife, I look back on the first couple of years of our relationship and we were so completely, like, totally enmeshed with each other. Like, we were so, you can say we were in love with each other and that's why the years were so good, but really we were just so completely like globbed onto each other. And for the first like 2 years that was amazing and felt wonderful, but eventually the unhealthiness of it caught up to us, and then spent the next 8 years trying so hard and it just not amounting to anything until it finally just almost overnight just it completely just ended, just abruptly. Like, the relationship went off a cliff. And like I had this image of her because of the first 2 years that I kept trying to get back to. I kept trying to be like, even if she can't remember, I will remember. I will remember how beautiful and amazing and wonderful and close and supportive and awesome she was. And I'll know who she is even when she doesn't remember who she is. And that's not real. That's just, I'm trying to come to terms with the fact that I've basically spent most of my life living in like a fantasy and being really slow to process reality. I feel like I've been like delusional, even though I realize it's like a coping method from growing up the way that I did. And when I was growing up, I had to live in not full reality because full reality kept making me want to kill myself. So, like, I had to live in a way that made it so I could survive, but it wasn't healthy. And none of the things that I wanted when I was like that were the things that would make me healthy. And some of the things that I wanted, I still want. And some of the things that I wanted weren't actually all that unhealthy, but a lot of the things that I wanted, and even some of the things that I still want, even though I recognize this, are just sheer desperation. Like, literally just desperation. And I'm trying to find a way to get to a point in my life where I am not so desperate. I am not so desperate that every time I see or hear the word unlovable, I like go into a mess. That every time I like come across anything that is upsetting, I somewhat emotionally shut down, and that I can be more real and present, not dissociating, not zoning out or in some sort of flashback. Like I am trying to get to a point where the things that I have been so desperate for my entire life, I am getting them from myself instead of trying so hard to find them externally. And recognize that it I have tried so hard in my life to be a good enough person to make up for myself when in reality I'm trying to get to a place where I can accept that I'm being a good person because that I am a good person, and I don't have anything to make up for, because a good person doesn't need to make up for existing. They don't need to make up for being there. And that if I cause someone inconvenience or if I cause someone disappointment, that it doesn't automatically mean I'm a bad guy and that I'm a bad person and that I am terrible and should like be miserable about it. That it's that someone can be upset and it might not even be my fault, and that I shouldn't just jump instantaneously to, well, I guess I'm terrible. I guess I failed once again to be a good enough person. Like I've somehow got to get to that, and I don't know how except to keep trying to do the things that I'm doing. I feel like I'm thinking about things that I've thought about before in my life, but I could never grasp them. I could never make it something tangibly applicable to my life, and I am trying really hard to this time apply it to my life. To this time get the lesson really learned instead of just encountering it. Um because I don't want the second half of my life to look like the first half of my life. And that doesn't just mean my physical body, as much as I desperately want surgeries. Even getting the surgery is part of removing desperation from my life. Like gender dysphoria creates such a sense of agony, and getting that no longer in me is just a huge thing. It's all part of the same thing. It's like I spent all of my youth thinking I should never have been born. I don't know what's wrong with me. Well, now I know what's wrong. I was born intersex, but I still have that horrible weight of, well, I should never have been born. And I am constantly, desperately trying to make my existence about everybody else because I should never have been born. And if I love everybody else, then maybe someday someone will love me the way that I ache for. And it's just maybe they can love me despite the fact that I should never have been born. And that's just not how it works, A, and healthy, B, and actually gonna help me see. Like, I need somehow to be getting to the point with myself where my instantaneous compulsion isn't a self dismissal and isn't a self belittling and isn't desperation. And the only way to do that is to somehow be able to build myself up and get myself to a point where my compulsions aren't determined by external things. They're They're consistent and they're stable because I'm consistent and I'm stable. And I'm extremely consistent when it comes to other people. I am consistent when it comes to other people. Not so much me. And I find it fascinating learning about like the things that people go through and childhood trauma and like our patterns of behavior and surviving and coping techniques and how juvenile some of our behaviors are that we bring into adulthood because it served us before. And so even though it's not serving us now, we hold on to it. And I don't know, it makes me feel a little better that I am at least somewhat the image of myself that I always desperately strove to be. That I had this ideal version of myself that I was always in pursuit of. And I feel like I actually do reflect a lot of the qualities of that ideal version of myself. Now, if only I could just cut myself some slack and remember that in the heat of moments. It's interesting because I'm basically at the age, getting close to, slash, the age where life starts to get better for modern day, current, generalized population people. 38 and 40 to 45 ish, around in there. Life starts to get better and it does a lot better for the rest of your life. So hopefully, I'm on the verge of making it through. I've got like 2 years more of surgery starting from whenever this next surgery happens. Technically, it'll be less than 2 years if there's no complications, but I'll be 40 basically, or almost 40. If if the surgery can happen soon, then it'll be almost 40 instead of actually 40, which would be amazing. I would be so thrilled. But even if it does end up being 40, and that'll be disappointing, it won't be devastating because I originally thought, oh goodness, what if this like takes all the way till 45? So I at least have that. And even if it does take till 40, at least I will get it done before, whoever next comes into the presidency takes away all rights, possibly, for me to even do stuff. If it ends up being that people vote for someone who would be detrimental to my being able to function. Because, unfortunately, people who uh, are against trans stuff really could care less about the medical side of things and intersex people and, like, that there's actual medical scientific proof of people needing help. Like, they don't care. They could care less. Um, like, I thought that me being intersex would make a difference to a lot of very religious people, and it doesn't matter to them at all. They could care less. They do not care. Trans is trans to them. It does not matter if you were born with sex characteristics of both male and female. It's like, for some reason, when you popped out, whatever they said is somehow the fact, whether or not it's true, whether or not it's really true. And you have just as strongly, when you have sex characteristics of both male and female, a chance of being a guy as a girl. And yet, oh, no, 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 that it's just whatever the doctor said is what it is. I actually have more sex characteristics of male than female. But do any of my religious relatives care? No, not at all. It does not matter to them in the least. They don't even the only thing that matters to them is the word trans. Like nothing else matters. It's very interesting to me because I always felt like if I could just justify it somehow, if I could just explain to them that this isn't my fault, but no, that it's still my fault, no matter what. Even though I was a baby, I didn't get to choose how I was born, didn't get to choose how I came out. It's still my fault. Obviously, something's wrong with me. I'm demon possessed. It's whatever. Like I'm bad, hellbound, whatever. They don't want me influencing any holy or righteousness, which is so funny because like there were intersex babies even back in biblical times. Um, they weren't called intersex, but you know, the word did not exist. But the point is it still happened. like, and it just does not matter to them. So thankfully, right now, it's looking like the majority of the country is stepping up and voting because in reality, there are way, way more democratic minded people, more progressive people living in this country than there are conservative people. Just statistically, like the numbers are very much there. There's a significant amount more people who are progressive than there are conservative. But the voting turnout numbers are pretty bad. The gerrymandering is pretty bad. And the people who are presented as options to vote for are pretty bad. So there's a lot of contention to deal with, but in actuality, if every Democrat and every Republican and every independent actually all voted, there would never be a Republican elected ever again. Like, if their votes could just count as a vote and there wasn't electoral college or gerrymandering and districting for voting. So, in reality, there are more people who are thinking about helping humanity and helping other people than there are who aren't. There's more people who care about being kind to others than there are who aren't. There's more people who want to care about the planet and care about humans and care about wildlife and care about people being able to exist with some dignity and quality of life than there are who don't. Whenever you, if you're watching this and you happen to be someone who's more progressive, whenever you get disheartened about how is it possible that there are people who are so callous or so quick to disregard the health of other people, just remember that they're actually the minority. They're very vocal, but there are less of them. And also statistically, they are also less educated. They're just not exposing themselves to all the knowledge that there is available and tend to be more ignorant of like the realities in the world, which makes them more susceptible to conspiracies and stuff like that. So it's sad. It is, but hopefully I will have my surgeries done before any risk like that can happen. Hopefully it won't even be a risk because, again, hopefully the majority will show up, and the majority are people who care about other people instead of not other people. I view conservatism as selfishness, like wanting to just hold on to what you have, and your religion's the only one that matters. Your economic value is the only thing that matters. Whether you're poor or not is the only thing that matters, or your bosses are getting rich so that they like you. It's the only thing that matters. It's a very selfish mindset, conservatism, as far as I can tell. Super selfish. So I'm not really drawn to it being someone with white knight syndrome. It's kind of the opposite of my mentality. Um, um, I'm not encouraging everyone to become more codependent. I'm just saying kindness is always the right answer. 100% of the time, kindness is the correct thing to do. That's my opinion. Um, I mean, everything in balance, you know. Like I would say, you know, incoming vehicle, yell at the kid to get out of the way. But they might not think that you were saying something very kind, but afterwards you go and you very kindly explain what was happening. They can see what was happening. You apologize for having to yell, but it got them out of the way. Everything's cleared up. Kindness is still the right choice. Like, I've heard conservatives say before, well, if you really love someone, you'll force them to do what will be best for them. And my response to that is twofold. How do you know what is best for them? They know what is best for them. They're the only ones who live with themselves 24/7. So they know better than you what is best for them the majority of the time. And then secondly, if you're trying to force them, then you don't care about them. You care about an idealized, made up fantasy version of them that you wish they were instead of what they are. And you don't accept them, you don't accept them, then you don't love them. That's how I feel about love. That's how I feel about it. So, again, conservatism is selfish because you want people to exist in a way that suits you, not in a way that is actually human and realistic and just them being them. Anyway, got a little off topic there, but I haven't done that in a long time. I haven't gone on a political whatever rant, I don't know what you want to call it, tangent, in a long time. I used to do that more, and then I was like, everybody knows my sentiments at this point, like if they've watched me. But I haven't done it in a while, so I guess I'm reiterating. But also, I don't know, all of the things all come together. Your worldview, your ideology, your morals, whatever, they affect all the aspects of it. It's not like it only affects your religion and nothing else. It affects the way you do business, it affects the way you talk to people, it affects the way you vote and are political. It affects what your hobbies are, like it affects everything. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to stop recording, hop off of here, go do some exercise. Yeah, next month, hopefully, I will actually record on the 18th because it will be the 2-year anniversary. So exciting. Anyway, hopefully, I will also have a freaking date for my scheduled surgery because I really desperately want my surgery. Anyway, that's where I'm at right now. Thanks for watching.